We commonly hear about the loss of IP in different organizations. It might be some credit card number or some sort of different IP. It could be someone's patent information or some sort of trade secret. And you see this in headlines day to day. And it's not very common if you look at some of the security breaches, and I have some of the numbers that I pulled together because I happen to be a math geek. So if you look at some of the security breaches that have happened from April 2005 till about December 2012, in this 7-year period, there have been like close to 3,525 data breaches. And these are the known data breaches which were reported, and the organizations were supposed to report the number of these data breaches. If you look at this number doesn't look that big by default, but when you consider that each breach contains multiple records and you multiply that with the total number of data breaches, we get to a big number. I think that's a 600 million or billion figure that you're seeing there. And a lot of this, if you look at the cost of the breach, an average cost is about $194 per record. And if you multiply that with the number of records that you saw, that's a good $600 million per incident, or 6 million rather, in this case. So the other thing to look here is what causes a breach. And there are three main factors that cause a breach of IP or loss of IP. First of them is the malicious intent. This would be someone outside your company trying to hack or trying to do something that he's not supposed to do. So this is a classic case of the bad guy doing the bad thing. The second case is the system glitches. Now, 0.1% of the time or 0.3% of the time, there might be something down with your servers or something, some patch was not applied or whatever, and because of that, there are some issues. The third breach, and this is the one that I want you to focus on, is the oops moment. And this is somebody trying to, accidentally sending something or putting something by mistake, and it's not intentional. It just happened because he's not trained enough, he's not educated enough in terms of the organization's policies. If you look at some of the numbers on these, and this data coming from one of the reports that I pulled through, it's about 40%, close to that is of the total breaches are due to the oops moment. The other thing that statistics pointed is of all of them, about 97% is avoidable. You can take actions and make sure that those breaches are not happening. Now, that gives you a perspective of why we need DLP and how we need DLP. And I'm going to jump straight into data loss prevention capabilities in Exchange. And I say Exchange because that's where DLP is available today as of now. But you'll see towards the end of the presentation that we will be expanding to other workloads as well. So in short, data loss prevention helps you to identify, monitor, and protect the sensitive content by performing deep sensitive analysis of the data. And you can do multiple things here. Number one, obviously, you can go and identify the sensitive content. You can monitor the content, you can monitor the mail flows, you can see how many people are trying to send the sensitive content. You can protect the sensitive contents. What do you mean by this is once you detect that a particular content or a message is sensitive, you can take actions on top of it, which will protect it. It might be encrypting that message if it's been sent outside, or applying some sort of rights protection, or maybe sending that message to the sender's managers to make sure that he gets an approval before the message is sent out. Lastly, the fourth pillar on the slide is about end user education, and this really is one of the major crux for the DLP offerings in Exchange today. Something called as policy tips. If you have seen them, it's a way where they can educate the users of what the organization's policy is, and if and how they should be sending that mail or sensitive content. With that, let me go ahead and do a quick demo, and this demo will focus on the Outlook policy tips and on, in short, the IW's point of view on how that works for him in day-to-day. And as I run through my demos, this is the first of the demo where we're looking at the end user perspective. when we get to the later slides, we'll look at the administrator perspective, and then we'll go ahead and create a policy of our own, and we'll round it up with yet another demo, which will cover end to end on what's happening behind the scenes. So I'm going to switch to my desktop now, and can one of you confirm that you're able to see the desktop? It should be coming up. Perfect, thank you. So I'm going to log into my Office 365 Admin Center right now. You can see I've logged into my Exchange Admin Center. This is the tenant for Contoso Pharma, which happens to be one of my demo tenants. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and click on data loss prevention, which is under the Compliance Management tab. And as you would see, there's already some policies set up in place already. I can see there is a commercial compliance policy, HIPAA policy, PCI policy, and so on set up. But let me show you how this works for the end user, because we'll come to this in a bit. So here I am logged into my Outlook, and I'm logged in as Sarah Davis on Contoso Play, which is my demo tenant. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a new email, and this email I'll try to send to someone outside my organization. So let's say we send this to Shobit@Microsoft. Now, Shobit@Microsoft.com is definitely outside my organization. My organization is Contoso Play, and at Microsoft.com is a different domain. It's outside. So I get a mail tip at the top which says the recipient is outside your organization. And I say, fine, that's cool. I don't have to worry about that. So, and I go ahead and say, let me compose my message. So, Shobit, travel booking, and I'm going to say, book my travel. I'm just going to provide some credit card number in my email. So let me go ahead and do this. And this is just a test credit card number, so it's not going to work on any of your desktop, but just for demo purposes. So what will happen as I'm typing this message is I get a policy tip at the top. And this is slightly different from the mail tip. You had a mail tip which said the Shobit is outside the organization. But what the policy tip says is that the message contains some sensitive information. And when I try to hover over the message, I see that that sensitive information is a credit card number. Now, this is interesting because it tells me that you're sending something which is sensitive, but it's not really taking an action. It's just telling me, hey, by the way, here's a sensitive content, but you can go ahead and send it. So I don't have any trouble sending this message. I can go ahead and send it without fail, and it works fine. But look at what's happening behind the scenes here. You are educating the user that, hey, you're about to send something sensitive. Let's take this one step further. Let's say I want to send another email, and this time again I'll compose this as Shobit. So I get my email, I get my mail tip, and instead of sending one credit card number which I sent, which I added over the email subject or the body, let's go ahead and attach a couple of files. One of those files is actually containing multiple credit card numbers. And you would see that straight away I get a policy tip, but this time it looks different. And one of the attachments is highlighted. So if you look at this carefully, a couple of things are happening here. Number one, my recipient is highlighted in red, which tells me that this message is sent outside. The attachment is highlighted, and I'm like, okay, why is this highlighted? So I'm going to go back and read the policy tip, and it tells me again that the message contains the credit card number. And this time, if I want to send this message externally, I have to provide a business justification. So because Shobit@Microsoft is not authorized to receive this information, and if I have to send this message, I must click override. If I click override, you would get this pop-up box. And what this pop-up box asks for is a business justification that you must provide if you have to send this message. Now, Shobit@Microsoft, I know, is a trusted partner, and I can say this is a trusted partner. And at this point, if I click on override, what's going to happen is the policy tip would change. So now the policy tip reads that this message contains sensitive information, and your decision might be reviewed later by the organization. So in the backend, even though if I'm allowed to send this message because I've provided a business justification, my administrator can still track what business justification was provided and take subsequent actions based on that. So now I can, I enter the subject and click on send, and the message would be sent. So that gives you a perspective of the end user view of what the let me open up the slides again, what the experience is like. So policy tips is a great way for you to educate your end users, telling them what they can send versus what they cannot. And also it's a great place where you can enforce your policies. So you can say, allow my sender to send a message only if he provides a business justification. And this really puts the ball in the sender's or your user's hands, and then he can decide, okay, is this right for the organization or is this wrong? The other thing that you can do there, and I missed that, was the learn more link. You can actually see a learn more link, and that link can be your link to company organization's policy, which might force the user to go and read the organization's policy before he sends that message. Because nobody likes to carry the handbook. So it will be a really good educational tool for the end users. So I have a couple of questions that I can see real quick. So how would this work if we use EOP DLP combination and we have on-premise exchange? So this question is coming from Tejas Shah. So Tejas, you should be able to use the same capabilities with your on-premises exchange as well. The only criteria there is you'll have to route your email through Exchange Online Protection or set up some sort of hybrid mail flow. Ryan has some, I don't know if that's a question. Okay, we'll skip that. If you override, what does the note, where does the note get recorded for easy privacy officer viewing? So you can do a couple of things there. You can actually send that to your send that as an email to your incident management team or your chief compliance officer, or you can audit that information. It gets saved in the message logs as well. All right, so let's move on with the next step, and let's think about what happened here behind the scenes. And I've got a slide here which does this in an animation sort of format, so it's easy to consume. So the first thing that's going to happen is the administrator is going to set up some policies. So in this case, for example, I was able to detect the credit card numbers. That means I set up a policy that basically detected credit card numbers or social security numbers or things like that. So as an administrator, I'll set that policy. And once that policy is configured, that's done on the Exchange server or Exchange Online, whichever one you're using. And what's going to happen is for the clients, because I was using Outlook web app, or rather Outlook in this case, that policy would be downloaded as a local profile to the recipient's inbox. Now, this would be sitting somewhere on your C drive users mail Outlook folder, essentially. And every time you open Outlook, that policy will be refreshed. And typically, we push down those changes every 24 hours. So you would see that reflected every time you open your Outlook, and the new policy should be updated. Now, when the information workers tries to send that message, at that point, we would provide the contextual policy education, which means basically the policy tips that you saw in the demo. And based on that, let's say he does decide to send that message and the message goes through, we can still take the action on the Exchange server, because at that point, again, we perform another backend policy evaluation. So, so there are two ways or two places where you can really enforce DLP or take actions. One is obviously at the end user level when he's trying to send that message or composing that message. And the second is once that message has been sent out, you can decide whether you want to block it at your parameter or if you want to take any subsequent action. Lastly, you can also do some sort of audit and incident data generation, and I have some slides on this later in the deck, so we'll get to it in just a bit. So how does DLP policy enforcement work? The simple answer is it's based on the exchange transport rules, which makes it a lot easier to consume. So if you are familiar with ETRs or have been using EOP, it's extremely similar. In fact, it's using the same set of rules. It's built on top of it. Uh, and you can choose a different granularity of rules here. You can decide to take actions that just basically go and alert the user, don't take any harsh action, to go ahead and encrypt the data or ask for an override where he has to provide a business justification, or you can be outrageous and just go ahead and block that message if required. So there are different granularities because all of this is built on exchange transport rules. So anything from sending that message to the sender's manager for approval, to blocking that message, to allowing him to send it is totally possible. The other thing is you can plug it and combine it together with the other parameters for exchange transport rules. So for example, rights management, it's also one of the features that's available through exchange transport rules. So you can really bring those two together, and that's where the synergy of DLP and encryption comes into play. So I can set up policies which say, hey, if my message contains sensitive information and it's been sent outside the organization, apply Office 365 message encryption. Or if it's been sent internally to my organization, apply rights protection and encrypt that with do not forward or company confidential template. So I talked about policy templates, but what they are really is a bunch of by default templates that we have provided, and these contain some of the sensitive information types that are available or that are commonly used worldwide. I think there are close to about 40 something out-of-box policy templates that we provide. And you can also go ahead and create your own policy templates. At the end of the day, it's XML based, and you should be able to create a new template very easily. And if you look at what DLP policy templates are beneath the hood, here's a small screenshot that you're looking at. It's one of the XML files. And what this XML file is doing is it's looking for the US social security number, and it's defining, hey, within the message, how many text characters should I scan across? You can decide, hey, if you find a 7-digit number which matches the social security number format and it's spread within 300 characters, assign so and so confidence level. And based on that confidence level, you can decide to enforce whether you want to show the policy tip or not. So that's just to give you an idea of how that works, and how DLP policies are enforced on top of the exchange transport rules to do the deep sensitive content analysis. I talked about that DLP policy rules are very familiar and very similar, in fact, to the exchange transport rules, and that's because it's built on top of it. So on the screen here, you are seeing one of those examples. You are seeing a PCI DSS policy, which is the credit card policy I just demoed some minutes ago. And essentially, you would have a bunch of rules here, which are transport rule conditions. So recipient is located outside the organization. You can choose this to be internal or different parameters that you can use here. And you have something called a DLP specific condition. And the DLP specific condition reads, the message contains sensitive information. The moment you use this predicate where the message contains sensitive information, that's where you're using DLP. And that's how this is also licensed as well. When you use this predicate, you are licensed. You must have a DLP license essentially, the license that covers DLP capabilities. In this case, I'm able to detect the credit card number, and based on that, I'm doing a DLP specific action. So you should see that right here. It says, hey, there's a policy tip, and then finally I'm adding a DLP, not a DLP specific, but a generic transport rule action on top of it. And I'll demo this as well in just a bit. So if you have any questions, just hold for now. And because it's a transport rule, you can add exceptions. So if you want to say, hey, allow everyone in my organization to send the credit card number only if they provide a business justification, but don't let this rule fire for the CEO of the company, you can totally do that. So let's look at the DLP policy management. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop. And I know some people are having some difficulties, but I think it's mostly because of the network bandwidth. I've done quite a few of these calls. It's probably because of that. But if you are going to miss out on this call, if you are joining externally, we will be posting this deck on YouTube channel for Office 365, so you should be able to see the recording with the screenshots and everything. All right, I'm gonna go back to my DLP portal. And this time again, I'm an Exchange Admin Center. I'm on the DLP page, and I already have a bunch of policies that are set up. So I have the DLP policy for PCI DSS, which is the one that detects credit card numbers. There's the policy for Power Compliance Act. There's a medical sample or a commercial compliance policy, and it's very easy to set up a new policy. So let's look at how we do that. If I click on this plus button, it's going to bring up this particular set of options, which tells me I can create a new policy template or rather new policy from a template, or I can import a new DLP policy, or I can go and create a new custom policy on my own. So let's go ahead and select the first option, which is creating a DLP policy from a new template. And this opens up a new box here, and you can see here. And essentially what you will notice is there's already a bunch of policy templates that are present by default. I can see the Australian financial data, I can see Canada Health Information Act, I can see France Data Protection Act, I can see the PCI DSS, I can see all of those policies. And these are some top policies that we have created out of the box that are available to you to use straight away. And these are the most common policy templates that are available, which we felt were asked by our customers, and we made sure that these are available out of the box. And if I have to leverage any of these, I simply go ahead and click and say name the policy. So I can say this is PCI policy, add some description, and click save, and that should set up a PCI DSS policy, which I've already done here. So let me open up the policy that I just set up for this demo. And what happens by default is when a new policy is set up, it creates some rules by default. In this case, you're seeing 5 rules because that's the number of rules that it will create by default. And some of these rules would be like, hey, what happens if my message contains credit card number, and it contains credit card number between 1 to 9, in a sense that there are up to 10 credit card numbers. That I can set up as a low count scenario, because you may not want to enforce certain actions based off it, but you would certainly want to enforce more actions if your message contains more than 50 or 100 credit card numbers. And that's what this rule does. This is the PCI DSS with count. If I open this up, so this rule, for example, is will trigger if the recipient is located outside the organization. And once again, I can choose whether this is outside the organization, inside the organization, if it's a partner organization, and so on. The next step, like I said, is DLP specific, where we say the message should contain sensitive information. And in this case, I'm detecting credit card number. And if you look at this particular box, it says there's a minimum count of 10, which basically means this message would or this policy rule would fire only if the message contains at least 10 credit card numbers. The maximum credit card number is any, but you can set up a limit here if you only want to detect it up to like 1,000 and so on. The main idea behind this rule is I want to take different actions based on how many credit card numbers are sent. 5 credit card numbers, I'm fine. I think I can maybe he's trying to book a travel for 10 people or so on. But if he's trying to send credit card numbers of like 1,000 people, that's something definitely fishy. So, and although this policy is created for the credit card number to be detected, you can add more sensitive information types very easily. So if I click on that plus button, it shows me all those sensitive information types that I can use. So I can see once again the Australian tax file number, the passport number, driver's license number, everything is available out of the box here. And you can also create your own custom information type if you are creating a new policy, or you can use document fingerprinting, for example, which will also create information or a sensitive information type of the way you want it. And I'll demo that as well as we go along. So Based on my conditions, I'm doing a couple of actions here. Number one, I'm generating an incident report, which will be sent to my incident management team, and I can decide what content I want to be included in that message. So every time someone tries to send that sensitive content, my incident management team gets a mail which says, "Hey, someone tried to send this information, and this is all what they sent." So you can see the subject, recipient, what rule got fired, what was the content exactly, and so on. I'm also taking a step further by making sure that I'm notifying the user with policy tip. And again, you saw the demo for this, but the thing that I wanted to point out here was the different granularity options that you can take. So I can choose from simply just notifying the user, but allowing him to send, to blocking the message, to taking somewhere a middle step, right? So making sure that I can block the message, but I'm going to allow my sender to send it as long as he provides a business justification. So there are different options that are available to you to choose from, and it's very easy to enforce. Lastly, the other thing that I'm doing here is, even though the message has been sent outside, and even if he's providing the business justification, I'm going to take one extra step and make sure that that message is encrypted. So in this case, I'm encrypting the message with Office 365 message encryption, which is our new encryption service which works great in a B2C scenario when you want to encrypt or send an encrypted email. I can also apply rights protection, and based on that, on the template that you choose, you can decide, hey, I want to apply a Contoso confidential or a do not forward template, and that message will be rights protected by default. So that was the policy rule and how you create it. So we looked at how we create a new policy, how does the different rule work, and we looked at the different actions and conditions that you can choose from. Very simple and a very effective tool. Let me go back to my slide now. So while this is loading, let me see if this is I have some questions. I see on-premise license for DLP. So if you have an eCal with services, you should get DLP as well, which also, by the way, gives you EOP and EOA. Did I miss regarding my question on Trust Center HIPAA? I didn't really cover anything on Trust Center, but if you have any specific questions, feel free to write it again. Is there a way to see exactly what a policy template does? For example, we need to block codes. How can we see this rule check for these? Yes, so you should be able to check this, the exact policy, how is it working, and what XML criteria has been set up. And I would some of this information is available on TechNet, and I can point you to those resources. And there's also one session that we did at Microsoft Exchange conference, which was purely focused on building a template in 75 minutes. And we will be publishing all those content onto Channel 9. So that's a great session if you want to create a new policy on your own. Okay, I'm going to continue with my slides because we are halfway down the timeline. So let's move forward. So we looked at some of the sensitive information. These are the content that's available out of the box, as I won't spend much time on this. But this is also one of our extensibility stories where we work with our partners to make sure that we build more and more content. So if there is a new content type that has come up and we need to work on it, or if we have a customer who's asking, hey, can I get a new policy template which does this, we will work on that and make sure that it's available in DLP. Now, if if it caters to multiple masters, which means if it's a very commonly used template, it definitely will be published by us and we will work on it. But if it's not something that's going to scale to such heights, and if it's something very specific, let's say a municipality in a particular city wants to create a new policy template, then we probably won't create it, but we have partners who can help us create those policies, and the customer can import it essentially and use that policy template. Here is the current standing of all our built-in DLP content areas. We have policies that scan across different countries and split across different verticals, from PII to financial to health information. This was the original offerings after Exchange 2013. We have added some more in the SP1 release, I think in Taiwan and in Poland and so on. Let's get this one. So just to cover a little bit on how the content analysis process works behind the scene. So here's an example that gives you how that's working. So in this example, I have a credit card number, which is 16-digit number, and I have obviously some expiry date and the visa information. What's going to happen is we'll first perform a regex analysis, and we'll detect that this is a 16-digit number, which also matches the checksum, which is the next step of functional analysis. For example, if you have a number which is 1234, 1234, and so on, that does not match a checksum. So by default, the confidence score on that will be very low. If it does matches the checksum, it will definitely increase the confidence score, but we'll look for some additional evidence. So for example, in the mail that you're seeing on the right of your screen, I can see that my credit card number also has a visa next to it. So I can see there's a visa right here. There's also an expiry, which essentially tells me there's a date to this. So using this information, I can decide, okay, this is definitely a credit card number, and it increases a score for this particular message. All right. With that, let's talk about DLP document fingerprinting, which is a new feature that we released along with Exchange SP1, and also it's available in the service, as you would have guessed it. And what document fingerprinting does is essentially it's a way for you to protect your sensitive documents or detect them as a sensitive information type. What I mean here is you can take a particular document, and based off that document, you can create a fingerprint so that if anyone in the future tries to send a similar document, then you can detect it and take subsequent actions. A classic example would be a document which has a fixed format. So something like a 1040 form, or something like a bank account opening form, or if you're working in a technological company, something like a patent form, because a patent has a fixed template. The good part here is that the same document fingerprinting can be tied together with DLP policy tip. So because you are creating a new sensitive type, you can see that experience in the end user experience as well. And here's how the configuration works, for example. So I'm taking an example of a patent, and I'll demo this as well so that it's much clearer. But a couple of things that I want you to notice here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a document and generate a fingerprint from it. When I say generate a fingerprint, it's a very simple process where we do a hash of the document and store some sort of a fingerprint / signature for that document. Once that fingerprint is completed, that turns up or shows up as one of the sensitive information type in your DLP policies. What you can do then is when someone tries to send that information with a new document, which is using the same fingerprint essentially, you can compare the two at runtime and take actions based off it. So, and obviously this match is based on the how similar these documents are, and again similar to the confidence that we assign in the case of credit card information. Similarly, we assign certain confidence levels in the case of document fingerprint. And some of this is obviously something that you can configure. If you put it all together, there are two steps here. One is configuration, when you actually create a fingerprint from a document. So you take a document, you generate a fingerprint, step one done. Step two, try to send some sensitive content using that same template or something that matches that template. And at runtime, we will make sure that we generate a new fingerprint, compare the two fingerprints together, and then based off that, take the necessary action. If you are a little lost, I am going to do a demo which makes it really simple and really clear. So once again, I am going to switch my screen to desktop real quick. And let me go back to the admin tab. So what I can do so there are two ways to look at this demo. Number one, I'll just go ahead and show you how this works from an administrator perspective, and then I'm going to go ahead and show the same from the end user experience. So you notice a new tab called Manage Document Fingerprints. So I'll click on that, and once you click on Manage Document Fingerprints, I can already see that I have some fingerprints that I've created by default. So I have a patent fingerprint, which is generated using Contoso patent template. And this document looks like this essentially, which is a blank document of how a patent looks. Now, this is a standard patent form which contains who the inventor of this idea was, what was the idea about, and so on. What you can do with it. So what I can do to generate a fingerprint is click on this plus sign, give the name for the fingerprint. So I can say test, add that particular document. So any document that I can see here, I can just go ahead and add that and provide some sort of description and click save. That generates a fingerprint. It's 3 steps and it's done. Very simple, very easy, doesn't require a lot of complications. I'm going to close this. Now, if someone tries to send a sensitive document which is similar to this, so I have another example open here, which is I have the same form, but it's filled in now. It's filled in with the actual content of my invention. So I can see this is a unified banking app, and it has all the names of the inventors. So I have Sarah Davis, Alex Darrow, and this does so and so thing with the invention. This is how the tool works, and so on. So I know this for sure. This is sensitive. So as an administrator, I can go to my DLP policy, and I've set up a policy called as commercial compliance for this purposes. And if I go into the rules, open the rule that triggers here, you will notice that it's very similar to the credit card scenario, but instead of scanning for credit card numbers, I'm scanning for patent, which is a fingerprint that I created just a minute back, or in the trial just before the demo. And that's great, because what's happening here behind the scene is, along with the by default sensitive information types that we provide, like the routing number or Australian passport number, I have something called as a patent, which is something that I created. And you can see that difference because the other ones are Microsoft Corporation. This one is done by Contoso Play, which I can detect on top of the already available sensitive information types. So that's what's happening behind the scenes for the administrator. Let's see what happens for the end user. So again, I'm Sarah Davis, and I am going to send a mail to Shobit at Microsoft. He's definitely outside. I get the familiar mail tip, and I'm going to attach a file, but instead of the PCI file this time, I'm going to attach the patent documents, and the real one, which looks like this. It has filled in information about the patent, what the invention is all about, and so on. Once I do this, in fact, while I was coming to it, I already see there's a policy tip that shows up. And it's very similar to the policy tip that you saw as in the case of credit card numbers. But the only difference here is that instead of credit card number, we are able to detect patent. And again, you could have said this is a Contoso Pharma patent, or for blah 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 blah, and that's totally configurable because you can name the sensitive information type. So this just gives you a sense of how document fingerprinting is working behind the scenes. Let me switch back to the deck. What document formats are supported? So we support everything that's basically is supported through the Exchange transport rules, whatever we can scan, which means not just the wide variety of Office documents, but also some of the other document types like PDFs and CSV files and things like that. Those are all supported by default. Wonder if you can take the provided DLP rules and turn those into fingerprint templates to make sure both settings. And I've not done this, but what you can do, Ryan, is you can in your rule you can set up a condition says the message contains either the fingerprint or bank account number, or and so and so. So you can combine those two together. Does email clients on mobile device support DLP tips? Perfect. That was a great question, and that was my next slide. I'm going to skip this one because it's a little more detail and we're running out of time. So we showed the policy tip to users, and there was a question there, how does this work for the devices? And I'm very happy to announce that it works great on policy tip for OVA, or the devices that support OVA. So today it's available in obviously the Windows devices. It's also available on iPad, and iPhone, because we released OAuth for these last year, and we announced at the MEC conference that it will also be available on the Android platforms. So the experience there is also very similar. You try to send that message, and you get a policy tip at the top that the message contains sensitive information. I can go and click on the Show Details tab, and that will basically will give you the sense of what's exactly happening here. And also, I need to close this. You can then decide, hey, the message contains credit card number. What you cannot do here on the email is you cannot send the override, I believe, at this point, but it's something that we're looking at. But Policy Tips is now available in OAuth for devices across platform. Everywhere OAuth travels, Policy Tips go along with it. So Android, iPad, iPhone, Windows phones, it's available everywhere. All right. That was the Policy Tips demo. So trying it all together was just to give you a sense of how the policy is working from behind the scenes, from the time we set the policy all the way till how the policies are triggered and how the user is educated by using the policy tips. So if you look at the Exchange feature set, I mean, we had a lot of this content available on Exchange 2013 and Outlook 2013. With SP1, we added policy tips in OAuth and policy tips for mobile OAuth or OAuth for devices. We added the document fingerprinting feature that you just saw, and we also added some new out-of-box sensitive information types. I think Taiwan, Poland, and one more country, I'm forgetting which one, but those new information types were added. And it's a list that we'll keep adding to if, as and when we get more and more requests to add certain information types. The other thing that we announced, and this is something that we did at the SharePoint conference, is the fact that we are bringing DLP to other workloads, starting with SharePoint. And so, for example, the first thing as part of that is the SharePoint, the search in the eDiscovery, for example. You can perform DLP-specific searches on eDiscovery. So, for example, if you want to search for a credit card number across different SharePoint sites, you could do that. It's not available right now. It's something that we are working on, and would be we announced it at SPC, and it should be available very soon. So this is just one starting point on how we are looking to expand outside Exchange. We'll have more things coming. I mean, ideally, you can imagine. I can't speak about it, but you can see that it's something that we are going to look at and see how we can bring it into other workloads. All right, I do want to talk certain other topics, and I'll take questions right after that. So reporting and logging, I talked about the incident reports. Here's an example of how that incident report looks. You can see that I get the message itself as an attachment, and on top of that, I also see different things like what rule was fired, what data classification was possible, what exactly was the confidence level, what was the severity of this message, who the sender was, who was it sent to, and so on. And you can really choose what kind of information you want to receive. And again, this is possible straight from the Exchange transport rules. So it's very easy, and you can choose what information you want to see in your incident report. Ideally, you would want to set up an incident report, or rather incident management team, that can actually look at this report from time to time and take actions based off it. The other thing that you can do is obviously reporting. And out of box on your Exchange Admin Center, you should be able to look at the DLP reports. So for example, you can look at which DLP rules were fired, which policy had how many matches, how many times people had to provide a business justification, how many types did I had an override, was there any false positive, false negative. Everything is possible. The other thing that I would like to point out is the Excel workbook, which is something that you can download and exactly look at in more detail, and perform the slice and dice of the data to look at what are the different options available to you, or if you want to look at some specific pattern, you can perform that out of the Excel workbook. All right, so this is my, I think, last topic, extending DLP for business, for your businesses, essentially. And there are four things that you have to consider when you're starting to deploy DLP. And the first up is identifying. And what it covers is essentially you identifying what are the different policy templates that you want to leverage, what are the different custom sensitive information types that you may have to build. And based on that, you would go ahead and try them out, make sure that it's matching your expectations, and fine tune those rules and take it from there. You can monitor those rules. And again, this goes back to my last point around reporting and also the incident report generation, because you can choose and see how those rules are getting fired and how they are working in your organization. You can choose from variety of different rules, actions, and conditions. And because it's using the exchange transport rules at the end of the day, it's all those rules and conditions are also part of our DLP essentially. So you can extend that beyond it. And lastly, the end user education, which is again the positive piece of it, where you can choose and customize your messages to the end user. And from the end users also, you can decide if they report certain things as false negatives, you will have to make sure that you're fine tuning those DLP specific rules. There are three phases that I look at if you're deploying DLP, if your customer is looking at this, or if you're looking to get started with DLP. The first step is planning. So this is where you identify what are the different businesses and regulatory options or requirements that you have. You could probably want to target a certain group of users, pilot only against them. And based off that, you would go ahead and set up a certain policy. The good thing with DLP policies, because it's again on top of exchange transport rules, you can run it in a test mode. And also you can decide that you want to run policy tips for the users, or you don't want to run it. So it's an option available to you out of the box, where you can decide that you want to run it with policy tips or without policy tips. Once you have run your particular set of templates and rules for a period, it will be the time for you to fine tune those rules. If you want to change a certain confidence level for a particular scenario, let's say we assign about 75% confidence to a particular number matching the social security number, and you want to change that to 85% based on your learning because you're seeing slightly more false negatives, you can totally do that, because you can go out of the box and change that particular policy, or rather create a new policy similar to that and just fine tune it and call it my PCI policy. And lastly, once you have made sure that, hey, the policies are firing all right, you can move the policy from the test mode to enable mode, and you can continue to monitor the trends and make sure that your policy are working fine and there's less false positives to work with. I mentioned that you can customize the end user policy tips, and this is how you can do that. Essentially, the policy tip itself, right now in this example, you're looking at different policies that are available out of the box. For example, in first case, when I tried to enter a credit card number, it gave me the first policy that it contains sensitive content, but they must be authorized, but the recipients must be authorized, but it didn't ask me for any of the business justification or approval. But in the second case, when I tried to send an attachment, there was a box that I had to fill out, essentially providing what business justification is needed for that message. Lastly, there is the third piece, which is about the customizing the link for end user education. So if you look at this link, when we provide the sensitive information type to the end user within the policy tip, there's also a learn more link, which is something that you can customize to point the users to your compliance page, essentially. And this can be your own company's compliance page, where the users can go and learn more about company's rules and regulations. So it's really enforcing the user, educating them, and informing them enough so that they can make the right decision. Again, the other thing to point there is that the custom classification rules will be displayed there. So in my case, when I did the demo for document fingerprinting, you saw the patent being shown up on that screen. You can change that to any sensitive information type that you create. You want to create my own soccer team, that should show up there too. Whatever you want to create, it should be totally customizable, and you should be able to see that within the policy tip. There are certain extensibility points. I know there are certain people who are looking for some partnership on the call. So we do have DLP extensibility in terms of the policy templates that we provide. So we are continuously expanding that list. So if you have some policy templates or you want to partner with us, I mean, I'll be a good contact to reach out to. So that's something that you can help us with. One of the examples that I like to point out is what Dell did, and they kind of built with MessageStat Business Insights from Dell. They built the DLP reporting for on-premises Exchange customers. That is something that we did not release as part of our initial Exchange 2013 release, and Dell actually came up as one of the partners, and they actually went ahead and built this out. So if you are aware of any partners, or if you are a partner and you have some ideas here, these are a great way to extend DLP beyond what we offer today, and it's part of our extensibility story. So I'm happy to talk more if you have anything to share there. Here are some resources that you would be that should be a good reference to all of you. I think a lot of these are technical resources which talk about the different topics, from fingerprinting to the sensitive information types and how do you create one of your own, to customizing your policy tips and so on. So go through these, and people who are from Microsoft who are internally on the call, there is also some resources on Infopedia, and there'll be some more resources that I'll be posting soon. So I'll keep